Hi everyone and welcome to the live edition of You Are My Borough. We promised you at the start of the week that we'd jump on and we'd have a chat and we'd answer some questions and we'd talk through things. And for once, we've been as good as our word. Normally we make these promises and things get in the way, but we are here, myself and Dom. So jump on in the comments below. Anything you want to ask, anything you want to talk about, it'll obviously come through and we'll pull them up. Alternatively, if you want, then get on to me and Dom's social media channels. We've both got our Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, open. So anything you want to fire there, that's absolutely fine. We'll get going in a sec in terms of the questions, but let's just start, Dom, with a couple of things. Rob Edwards obviously now has been confirmed as Wolves' manager. Wolves put out their own statement to confirm it. Borough put out their statement at the same time. And then last night, Rob Edwards piped up himself with a few words that he put out via social media. I mean, no really surprises in what anyone said, but I guess what did you make of the Rob Edwards statement in particular?
I wasn't sure how he'd play it, really. I didn't know whether he would put out a statement like that or whether he'd just kind of refer to it, I guess, in when he first did his first interview with Wolves. But obviously, yeah, he put it out on Instagram last night. And if you haven't seen it, he said, "This has been one of the toughest decisions of my career. In truth, I wouldn't have considered leaving Middlesbrough for any other club. Wolves is a special club for me. It's where I grew as both a player and a coach. It's still where my family calls home. It's always been my dream to come back, and these opportunities do not come around too often. Middlesbrough is an incredible club with a fantastic owner, staff, and passionate supporters. I want to thank everyone at the club for the opportunity to lead this squad. It's a great group of players that I genuinely hope and believe will deliver success this season. I could not be prouder of the environment we built together and how it all gelled together so quickly. The players, the staff, and the fans who drive it all. I sincerely wish everyone at Middlesbrough all the very best for the rest of the season and beyond." I mean, it went down as you'd expect, I think, didn't it? Clearly, fans who've made their mind up and understandably are not going to be appeased by a statement like that. I don't think there's anything in there that comes as a surprise, really, is there? But the reality is, just because of everything, without going over all ground again, because of everything he'd kind of said in the first few months, only to then leave after 5 months, the reaction is inevitable to it, isn't it? What did you make of it?
Similar, very, very similar, really. I mean, we actually had a chat yesterday and wondered if Edwards would be doing something at Wolves, and I kind of said, nailed on the phrase, or something like the phrase, "I wouldn't have left for any other club. Yeah. This is the only job that," I mean, that was always going to be in there, wasn't it? That was always going to be his line, and he's clearly going to be sticking to that. I mean, I think the view from most Borough fans now that I speak to and that I see on socials and stuff is, right, it's done now.
Yeah.
It's done now. Let's draw a line under it. He's gone. We're annoyed at the way it's happened. We think he's done the dirty on us, all of that. But, it's done. Let him get on with it at Wolves and get on with it. I mean, yeah, why put out a statement at all? I mean, I can see that. I mean, I guess from Edwards' point of view, what he's probably... See, there's a good chance, isn't there, that Rob Edwards won't be up doing any actual press at Wolves until before they resume after the international break. So you're talking about over a week probably till he actually does his first press conference as Wolves boss. I'm guessing that he hopes by putting this out that he's not going to be asked a whole host of questions about Borough at that press conference and he can just get on with the Wolves. I suspect that's his thinking in terms of putting it out. Just one more before we dive into some questions. Great to see that we're getting a load in. Has anything changed from the last vid in terms of Borough's search and what they're doing and where they're at? Just very kind of quickly before we jump into specific questions, where do you think that's at? What's your feeling on it?
Still in the very early stages, obviously. I think what we have to stress here is this has caught Borough out, hasn't it? Clubs always plan for the future, don't the players and potential managers, I guess. But Borough never a fortnight ago envisaged they'd be in a scenario where they might be having to look for a new head coach in the November international break. So this has obviously caught Borough by surprise. But it's been clear since last weekend, hasn't it, that Edwards was going to go. So since then, obviously Borough set about lining up potential candidates or assessing potential candidates. And I think in the next few days, we'll set about speaking to people, will set about sitting down and not so much formal interviews, but just speaking to potential candidates, getting a feel of where they're at. And then from there, you compile a shorter shortlist, don't you? I've seen a few asking there about Oxford. You touched on this when we did it earlier this week, didn't you? I think there's every chance Adi Viveash is still in charge for Oxford on Saturday, because Adi Viveash is such a safe pair of hands. There is no rush there, is there? The Borough clearly want to make sure that it's the right decision rather than a fast decision. And I think there's no obvious standout candidate, is there? So Borough will obviously, understandably and rightly, speak to as many candidates as they can.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about the Oxford game in particular, I think the chances of Borough having a manager in place by certainly the middle of next week is looking pretty unlikely. So Adi Viveash is going to be taking training next week, building specifically towards that Oxford game. There's certainly, I would think, every chance he'll be taking training when the international players start coming back. So even if Borough would appoint a manager, say next Thursday, next Friday, I think Viveash, if not taking it by himself, to all intents and purposes, will take that Oxford game, because he's been the one putting the tactical plan together, sorting training out, doing all the specifics. So I think we're edging towards the point where he, if not in sole control of that game, will be having a major say over it.
And just on Viveash, I mean, yesterday obviously brought confirmation that Harry Watling had followed Edwards to Wolves. But the news that Viveash is staying is still at the club and will lead the first team, will continue to lead the first team in the interim period, was celebrated by fans. I've had a fair few messages from people saying that's the most important thing here, that Viveash is still at the club.
Yeah, for two real reasons. One, because he's going to give continuity, which Borough do need in this situation. For all that we say that, hopefully it will not be that disruptive. I think having Adi Viveash there as a bridge, if you like, between the two regimes is the best way of making it not as disruptive as it potentially could be. And then secondly, because, his track record would suggest he is one of, if not the best assistant managers in the Championship. He proved that under Mark Robins at Chelsea, at Coventry. He's doing, he's clearly been hugely influential when Rob Edwards was at Borough. Yeah. So, I think it would be absolute madness for Borough not to want to keep him if he's willing to stay, because everything about him screams the best you're going to get as an assistant manager in the Championship.
Right, let's have a pick through a few of the questions, and do get in touch in the comments underneath, because we've already had plenty coming in there. So where do we start? Here's a question. Do you think, as I do, that Steve Gibson, due to his principled nature, will only look to employ a manager who is out of work in this moment? And this has been a big talking point, I think, hasn't it? Just because Borough don't have a history of taking managers who are in work in other clubs. Where do you think we're at with this
so
time?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think the answer to that is, it's not an impossibility. There is not a blanket, we will not take a manager who is at a club. But for Borough to do that, I think a number of things would have to fall into place. Chiefly that the club that they're looking to take him from would at least be willing to have the conversation with Borough about that, so that there's not any semblance or any suggestion of Borough going behind their back, behind the manager's back, whatever. I think where we're at with this is, and it's not just with Rob Edwards, is it? Steve Gibson has made a real point throughout his career, really, of going down pretty hard on clubs who have gone behind Borough's back to try and take either managers or players. And I think he would feel, in fact, I pretty much know he would feel incredibly hypocritical if he then, or his club then, goes behind another club's back to try and prize their manager out. Now, I know I've seen people say it's because they want to do it on the cheap. I really don't think it's that. I think Borough would be prepared to pay compensation for the right manager if they thought he was the right man. What they wouldn't want to do is get in a scenario that Borough have been in themselves with Wolves, where they feel that, to all intents and purposes, the rules haven't been followed, and their manager's been, sounded out at the very least against their own wishes. I really don't think that there's much chance of Borough doing that. If they're going to go to a manager who's in a club, they will go to the club first and they will say, what are your feelings about us wanting to speak to your manager? If the club says, well, actually, yeah, we're happy for you to have that conversation as long as the compensation is right, whatever, I think Borough would do it. If they say, absolutely not, keep your hands off my manager, I think that will be the end of it from a Borough point of view.
Some praise pouring in for your kitchen. We did say before we started that it's slightly confusing when you appeared on screen and you were in a different angle. What did you say? What did you say?
I did see the backdrop and I did think, God, this is edging towards James Martin sat at the kitchen. I feel like I should just pop over to the hob and rustle up some steak tartare or something. But it's only because I've got so much clutter all over the table that it just made it easier to sit at this end.
Ian May, I firmly believe that Steven Gerrard is a quality manager in the making. His job choices so far have been questionable, but I think there's something in him. So
yeah, you go with that one. What do you think of that?
For what it's worth, the odds, and like we know kind of what odds mean at this stage. But Gary O'Neill 2-1 favourite, Steven Gerrard 4-1 favourite. Gerrard's an interesting one, isn't he? Because I think it's easy to look at Gerrard straight away and think Aston Villa, which obviously didn't go to plan for him. And I think the fact he's judged against the incredible job that Unai Emery's done doesn't help his cause there. I don't think anybody would have predicted that Emery would have gone in and had as much success as he did have. But there's no getting away from the fact it didn't go to plan for Gerrard at Villa. Did a good job at Rangers, a really, really good job at Rangers. And the struggles that managers have had at Rangers since has the opposite effect to the Emery impact, doesn't it, at Villa? I mean, the move to Saudi was a curious move because it's done what I think everybody thought it would do at the time. It's just kind of halted any momentum he had in his managerial career. So with Gerrard, I'm in a position where I don't really know. What I would say is, when Coventry appointed Frank Lampard last year, I thought, why are Coventry appointing Frank Lampard? We've seen that he's not going to be an elite manager, and he has done a remarkable job there, which I think is a reminder of the importance to not draw conclusions on managers too quickly. So I think Gerrard is an interesting one. There is no doubt that there's the profile there, and Gerrard wasn't playing. You know, this isn't like it's someone who's coming in who was playing 30 years ago. Gerrard would still come in and inspire a dressing room, wouldn't he? You would still imagine that the likes of Hayden Hackney would look up to Steven Gerrard and be blown away by Gerrard. You know, is there a possibility where someone like Gerrard could be more of a figurehead, I guess, with like elite coaches around him? I'm not saying Gerrard isn't one of those, but he had Michael Beale at Rangers, who was really, really highly rated as a coach, wasn't he, before he went into Sunderland, and that went disastrously wrong. So yeah, I think Gerrard is an interesting one. I don't think it's possible to really draw a strong conclusion either way on Gerrard as a manager. What do you think?
I think the easy initial thought with Gerrard is that it's a Carrick-esque appointment in that you're going for the name, you're going for the status, the kind of, you know, kudos that gives you, like you say, the power that name will have in a championship dressing room. I think that's probably a little bit unfair in Gerrard in that he does have a pedigree that Carrick didn't have when he was appointed, doesn't he? You know, he has done it at Rangers. Now, again, you know, and I guess this applies a little bit to Brendan Rodgers as well, who's another name that's out there. How much kind of, you know, where do you weight winning things in Scotland in terms of making you, you know, where does that put you? That's a moot point, isn't it? I mean... I've got to say, I only threw that in because I thought it was a type of thing they might rustle up on Sunday. I'm not, I'm not a steak tart. Well, actually, fair, I like it, but yeah, I can't say I'll make it regularly. Where were we? Steven Gerrard. So I think there would be a lot that would appeal about Gerrard. What would go against him? You would imagine he'd be expensive in relation to a number of the other candidates who are probably out there and in the equation. I would think he'd be pretty strong about wanting a team around him. You know, I've seen one other question that someone asked, is Eddie Viveash a deal breaker? I don't think he's a deal breaker. I think if a manager could make a really strong argument about why they felt they had to have their own people, Borough would have the conversation on that. But the very, very, very strong preference from Borough is that Eddie Viveash is part of this team moving forward. And I think if a manager came in and carte blanche said, I don't want that, that would count against them. Now, I'm not saying Gerrard would say that, but he does tend to take his own people with him.
You mentioned Carrick there. We've had a few in the comments asking about Carrick, because I think Don Hutchinson has been saying that he thinks it'd be a good decision for Borough to go back to Carrick, or words to that effect. I mean, that's not going to happen, is it? Michael Carrick is. I think we can absolutely dismiss that. Michael Carrick is not.
I mean, it's not the fact that the departure was so acrimonious that it would be impossible for Carrick to come back. It's not that. It's just the fact that all the questions that Borough felt Michael Carrick was unable to answer in the summer when they did the review and basically decided that it wasn't right for him to carry on. Well, why is he suddenly going to have the answers to that now? Why is he suddenly going to change? And, you know, I just, all the issues that Borough had with Carrick in the summer would still be there now. I'd be, you know, listen, never say never. I'd be utterly amazed if Michael Carrick returned as Borough manager.
Chris there, Adi is an old head. I don't think he'd take. I think he'd understand what the suggestion was there. An experienced
head. Actually, nowhere near as old as you think, is he?
No, 56.
Yeah. He looks older than that.
Well, I can't comment on that because Hellfire.
Right, well, to be fair, we're both 26, aren't we? So, you know.
Craig Mack, with the position we're in now, surely we're likely to hire an experienced head coach rather than giving someone their first job. I don't necessarily about experience. I think you would say it's unlikely at this stage that someone is going to come in with the first job. But what I would say is the position at Borough, which is always hugely appealing, has probably never been as appealing. I did the piece earlier this week with basically saying, when was the last time a job in the Championship, not just at Borough, but in the Championship, came up mid-season that was as appealing as this one? The Borough second in the table, first of all, but it's the bigger picture, isn't it? It's the quality of the squad. The fact that the recruitment team, led by Kieran Scott and Chris Jones, have shown repeatedly that they can pick out players who are going to shine at this level. So it's not like you're going to come in and necessarily worry about losing your best players and what might happen down the line, because Borough have shown they can adjust to that. Then there's the fact you've got an owner who's going to back you with time and patience. You've got a galvanised and united fan base, more than 27,000 average so far this season, when the Championship average is 22,000. If you're looking for a job at the top end of the Championship, this is as best as you're going to get, isn't it? Now, whether you're a manager out of work or whether you're a manager in work whose future might be uncertain, Carlos Corberan, for example's future's been in doubt at Valencia. That's just a name off the top of my head. But yeah, it's no surprise that Borough have been inundated with interest, is it?
No, I mean, as you rightly say, you know, it's once in a blue moon, really. You get the chance to take over a club where everything feels like it's in place, and actually, all you've got to do is build on what's gone before, not rip it apart. In answer to Craig's question in particular, what I would say is, I think my response to that would be, it depends what you mean by first job. So somebody coming completely new to coach and management, everything. Yeah, I don't think Borough would go down there. A figure who's got a coaching pedigree, but has never actually been the head man himself, I think Borough would be more than willing to consider that, because, you know, Karanka, McLaren, Carrick, Robson. You know, I think Borough actually quite like that idea of someone who's got a bit of experience coaching, has made a bit of a name for themselves in that sphere, has something about them, but needs that first opportunity to strike out on their own. If that type of figure is out there, I think that they would be a big appeal to Borough, because, you know, like I say, you only have to look at the kind of people they've appointed in the past to know that Steve Gibson's willing to go down that route. And it feels like Kieran Scott is too, if they think it's the right man.
And this point here from Chris is that taps into that, doesn't it? And that's why this appointment feels different, because obviously there's always a need to get the balance right. But Borough second in the Championship, and the Championship this season feels like it's a huge opportunity. It's really get-atable. So what's the importance on the balance between getting this appointment right and not allowing this season's momentum to peter out? Do they need to make a statement when everyone is galvanised? Yeah, I get that. I mean, that's why Adi Viveash, first of all, I think is important now, isn't it? As the bridge between what happens and what comes next. But this next appointment it's clearly it's going to be someone who you want to be in place for the long term and who you think is going to be a success for the long term. But it's also an appointment with the short term in mind, because Borough are right in there and have as good a chance as anyone as winning promotion this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get what Chris is saying. I think I think what Borough shouldn't be doing, and I don't think they will, is just go with a name. Just go with a name because they think that it just needs that spark and that'll get it. We're only in November. There's a hell of a lot of this season still to go. So while, Borough need to keep the momentum going, they also need a top-class coach who knows what they're doing and is able to, get this team, keep them on the right track, get them going. There's going to be ups and downs along the way. For all that we keep saying this is a brilliant job and Borough are brilliantly placed, they are. But I think we also agree that there are issues with that attack that Rob Edwards wasn't really able to get to the bottom of. So whoever comes in is going to have to sort that out. They're going to have to come up with a formula that we haven't really seen yet this season in attack straight off the bat. So, yes, I see that this is a chance to start from a position of real strength. But I still think the fundamentals, if you like, of any head coach search will still apply. They need to be able to do it on the training pitch. They need to be able to handle the pressure of being at a club the size of Borough. They need to be able to make the kind of in-game changes that we praised Rob Edwards for all the time and didn't feel Michael Carrick was able to do. So there's a hell of a lot of boxes that they need to tick.
This is an interesting one, isn't it? Because we had this conversation yesterday morning.
Yeah.
On the phone, didn't we? I was not surprised that Rob Edwards would take a leap back to Premier League with Wolves and past history he has there. We haven't had that conversation on the phone yesterday morning, although we did have that conversation on the phone for 5-6 mornings in a row before that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I wonder about Brendan Rodgers as new boss, and you've done a piece yesterday morning, haven't you? Just weighing up, really, potential runners and rivals.
Yeah.
And you said, didn't you, what about Brendan Rodgers?
Well, it felt like when you were reading through the list, and I don't want to be disparaging here in any way, but a lot of the names were the names that you would just straight away say, well, they're going to be linked with, and Rodgers is the one that's a bit of a wild card, in my opinion, because at no stage in previous Borough manager searches, I mean, Gary O'Neill's name has been linked with Borough every time the job's come up. Carlos Corberan's has to a degree. Steven Gerrard, that type of figure has. There's never been a point where Borough have had any chance of getting Rodgers, to the best of my knowledge, when they've been searching for a manager. And yet the timing of this one is when Rodgers has obviously just left Celtic. Every interview he's given, he's kind of saying he doesn't want to be out the game for that long. He wants to get back in and all of that. I mean, two things there, I guess. Would Rodgers want to manage in the Championship? That's an unknown. He might not. He might feel that he's well beyond that and he's happy to wait for a Premier League job or he'll go abroad. Could Borough afford Brendan Rodgers? That's another issue. I mean, you're talking about a manager there who has been at Liverpool, has been at Celtic, would almost certainly command or expect a higher level of wage than you would imagine a Carlos Corberan or a Raphael Wicky or anyone like that. So it's a different conversation, I think, with Rodgers. But there is a part of you that feels, is he just that little bit more elite than any of the others? Is he at a different managerial level to anybody else we're going to be having the conversation about? He's won countless things with Celtic. Again, what does that actually mean? I take that point. But he won the FA Cup with Leicester. Right at the start of his career, he did really good things with that Swansea side. He got them into Championship playoffs.
Well, I mean, he's a slip away from winning the Premier League with Liverpool.
Yeah. It feels like of all of them, he is probably at a different level to everyone else. But could Borough realistically get him? I don't know is the answer to that. I mean, Jonathan's there with a comment. Jonathan Yajima, surely Rodgers too expensive. That's possible. Ian May, I think Rodgers is probably holding out for the Leeds job. That's possible. I think Borough should ask the question, though. And it might well be that the answer comes back, no, fine, move on. But I'd be surprised if they weren't at the very least asking the question.
My preference would be Lee Carsley, says Simon. He's not even on the bookies list. How realistic would that be? Well, honest answer is I don't know. I don't know whether Carsley is interested. Funnily enough, I think I'm in on a Zoom call with Carsley this afternoon for England under 21.
Oh yeah,
I'm not sure how well
it'd
go down with the FA.
Who are they playing? Do you know who they're playing?
Ireland.
I'll put you on the spot. Ireland. Never mind Ireland. Never mind Ireland, Lee.
Yeah. Just one from me, Lee.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that would appeal about him. His coaching record with England under 21s and just within that FA setup is massively well respected. Might he think that if it all goes disastrously wrong for Tuchel in this next summer, he's got a chance of being the next England boss?
Does he want the? I mean, he spoke last year
to be the
like
next
a man
England boss?
He spoke last year like a man who absolutely didn't want it. What you would say?
If Lee Carsley wants to move into club management,
yeah,
then it feels like the job we're talking about with Borough is realistically probably the best entry point he's ever going to get because of the club, because of the situation, and because, you know, Lee Carsley's not going to walk into Liverpool or Man City or even Brighton or Bournemouth, I wouldn't have thought. So if he wants to be a club manager, then I would think, you know, Borough would be massively appealing, but that feels like a bit of an if at the minute.
Yeah, because if you're in Lee Carsley's position, and again, we're just purely speculating here because his name's been brought up, but if you're in Lee Carsley's position, this next move, if you want to go in to club management, can make or break your career. Because when you're in the FA like that, you know, unless when you're within the England setup, unless you do something disastrously wrong, you've got a good, secure job for a long time if you want it. Yeah. You've got to get that move into club management right. Well, as you say, how realistic is it that he gets a Premier League job? You wouldn't rule out a Brentford sort, would you? I mean, they appointed Keith Andrews in the summer. Nobody would have. Yeah. But yeah, top end of the Championship feels about right. And if you're in a position like Carsley, well, you're going in where you know you're going to get time and backing and support. That's an interesting one, right? Who else? What else have we got here? Let's just have a dig up. There's a fair few talking about Gerrard. Wasn't there an interview with Gerrard stating he would be happy to start with a new backroom staff? I think it was in the summer when he did it. Johnny Howson mentioned by a few. Johnny Howson with Viveash and another experienced coach would be magic. I think what you would say, you touched on it there about Borough maybe going for someone who might not have had a head coach role before. Borough have had huge success over the last few seasons of signing players from untapped markets and spotting the potential in them, believing that they could flourish and thrive in the Championship. And how many examples have we seen of that in the last couple of seasons? Well, I know a manager's different, but if you can back yourself to do the same, if you can see something that you believe others might not have seen, then that might be the best chance to get yourself a
start. And that's the wild card with this. I mean, on House now, you know, I mean, he's only been a coach for 5 minutes.
That's not
the emotional appeal. Yeah, get it, but you know, that's not going to happen.
No.
The wild card in all of this is a Regis Labris type appointment where. And Borough have never really made that appointment, have they? Ever? They've, you know, Carrick was an overseas boss, but he had the Mourinho link. He'd been at Real Madrid. He'd done all of that. What Borough have never done really is gone and got the up and coming coach that everyone in Europe's whispering about from the lower reaches of Ligue 1 or the top of the second division in Germany. Or do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that type of figure. That we've seen, you know, have big success in the Championship, a number of different, that type of manager at a number of different clubs. Labris is the obvious one because he's just up the road, but he's by no means the first one. So that type of manager would be interesting. It's not something Borough have really done in the past, but as we've said, in the last year or couple of years, it's pretty clear that Borough have overhauled their scouting structure, ability to scout that type of player right across Europe massively. So will that then open the door for them to be able to actually get an in with that type of head coach where they haven't really looked at in the past? I think that's interesting. The answer at the minute is because I don't think it's got to the stage where they're, you know, really speaking to people yet. We don't really know. Would Borough be willing to at least include one of those type of managers on any shortlist? I think there's an argument that they should be.
There's a couple on the screen there. Raphael Wicky is a name that's been mentioned. Yeah. Hutter I've seen mentioned by fans on social. I mean, what you're saying there, Wilfred Nancy is the Columbus Crew manager, I think, isn't he?
Yes.
And there's talk of him going to Celtic. I think
Celtic.
I think he's 48. I think I'd read earlier this week. So it's not like this is a young up and coming manager, but it's a manager in a league that maybe doesn't get the spotlight
Yeah.
from Premier League clubs when they're looking for a new manager, or certainly some top-end Championship clubs.
I mean, just on Wicky, he's that's a name that has been kind of flying around all week, really. And he's not that type of unknown, is he? I mean, he won the Swiss double with Basel. He's managed in the MLS. He's come back and had a stint at Young Boys. He was very, very close to getting the West Brom job, and I think he turned that down rather than the other way. I think he also was in the frame for Anderlecht. I mean, there's a definite.
It was talked about when Sunderland. It was talked about when Sunderland.
It was talked about with Sunderland. Yeah. So he's not your young up and comer where this would be a major step for him. There is a European coach and pedigree there. So again, you'd be surprised if Borough weren't at least considering that as an option.
Corberan is way too intense. He winds Rodgers for me.
I think with Corberan, intense. I get that. I think the style of play as well would be at least something you'd have to have the talking point about, because he is pretty pragmatic. He is get the job done anyway how, or at least his more successful teams have been. Would he fit the group that Borough have put together at the minute? Maybe. But it feels like that would be a conversation around Corberan that you'd at least need to have. That, is this just to get this team over the line this season? Or it feels like if Carlos Corberan was Borough manager for 2 or 3 years, then by the end of those 2 or 3 years, they'd be playing a very different type of football than what we've seen under Rob Edwards, put it like that.
From Jonathan, I've seen Southgate get a load of mentions. What's your thoughts on him? He was on daytime TV yesterday, was he not? I'm sure I've seen.
Well, I mean, that's the issue with Southgate. I mean,
I was just going to say, it feels like Southgate is more of an ambassadorial role type of guy now, doesn't it, than a head coach. And I'm not sure he's going to step back into the day-to-day.
No, I suspect Gareth Southgate, if he does have another job in football, will either be a senior position within the FA or a director of football at a club. That's my thinking of it. I mean, I think in lots of ways he'd be great. He's a completely different manager than he was when he was first at Borough, but he's got that link and all of that. But yeah, I mean, how much money will he be getting for this speaking tour and the book? And I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't see Gareth Southgate jumping at the chance to go and be a day-to-day manager in the Championship again.
From Craig, and we'll do a couple more and then we'll wrap up, because on the subject of Southgate in England, you've got a trip down to Wembley, haven't you? Do you think Edwards will try and sign any Borough players, i.e. Hackney? Well, if you're a Borough player, I think first of all, you bear in mind that this is Rob Edwards who's come in and almost promised the world, really, and then left after 5 months. But then taking that aside, Wolves are rock bottom in the Premier League, and I would be staggered if they stay up this season. If you're Hayden Hackney, doesn't look like a good career move in January, does it, to leave a club competing for promotion from the Championship to join Wolves at the bottom end of the Premier League? So I think that's extremely unlikely. Unlikely.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall as well when either Rob Edwards or someone in a senior position at Wolves picks up the phone to Steve Gibson and says, "Yeah, hi Steve, you know that little run-in we had? Well, Hayden Hackney."
Good price.
I mean, I'm with you. What type of player are Wolves going to be able to sign in January? God only. I mean, they could be 20 points adrift by then. Maybe they won't be. Maybe Rob Edwards is going to go in and wave his magic wand and everything's going to be fine there. But I'd be very, very surprised if, like you, any of the Borough players that would realistically have a chance of a move in the Premier League in January would jump at the chance to go to Wolves. And I just don't think Borough would entertain that business either.
No. Couple saying Dave Challoner, obviously his Stockport team are flying high in League One. I mean, the obvious issue with someone like Challoner is unknown at this level. Never managed to step. Done a good job done an incredible job at Stockport. But with respect, managing Stockport and taking charge of a Borough team that's second in the Championship, it's a completely different challenge, isn't it?
I mean, the football romantic in you thinks that someone like Dave Challoner, should get a chance at a decent Championship club to show what he can do. He's more than earned it, hasn't he? I mean, promotion after promotion after promotion, National League, League Two, looking like he might get Stockport out of League One this season. He's absolutely earned it, but as you quite rightly say, it's a risk. It would be a risk because we just don't know where his ceiling is as a coach. Like I say, I think that's how football should work. People should get chances. They should be able to move up the pyramid in the system. But when it's your club you're talking about, are Borough going to take that risk and make that leap? Feels unlikely.
Well, thanks so much for all the comments. And we'll go live again early next week. Monday or Tuesday, we'll go live and we'll jump on again. No, middle of the week, because you're away watching England, aren't you, over this weekend?
I am. So... I'm heading down to Wembley tonight, and then I'm going to Tirana for a couple of days. Yeah. Albania. That's going to be
the serve steak tartar in Albania.
The serve steak tartar. I think it's meant to be like quite. It's got this obviously communist era kind of reputation, but I think it's one of a real up and coming city. So I reckon I'll get a bit of steak tartar in Tirana.
Well, middle of next week we'll jump back on.
We will.
Thanks for all the darts nicknames.
Yes, the Dominator, whoever that was, that is absolutely far and away the Dominator.
So if we have any graphic designers who want to rustle up a T-shirt for me, maybe for the start of the Redcar Winter League,
will you wear it at your next away game, Eston Social Club or someone? Will you get it on?
Absolutely. Although to be fair, I need to improve on my performance on Monday night. If I said I got through to the last 16, that'd sound impressive. But the problem was there's only 32 people in it, and I got a bye in the first round. So it's not. It wasn't a great night.
There we go.
Great. Well, thanks for all those comments.
Clearly.
Apologies if we didn't get to them because there was loads there. So thanks so much for getting in touch, and we'll shout.
Just before we end, I want to say just answer to one. I saw it. I'm going to scroll through it. Yeah, sorry. Where was it? There was someone said there. Ryan Guttridge. There's been reports overnight linking Scott Wilson with the Whitby Gazette. We simply have to ask the question: is there any truth in this, or can we relax? Well, all I would say in answer to that is that my daughter did inform me about that this morning, but at the minute, my sole focus is on You Are My Borough.
Let's wrap up there. We'll be back. We'll be back next week. We'll shout up and we'll go live again. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Take care.